At length, quite spent and tired with her work, she became extremely thirsty. So she stood still, drew up her head, and cried, "Meow, meow." The king gathered together all his subjects when they heard this strange cry, and many ran shrieking in the great fright out of the palace. But the king held a council below as to what was best to be done. And it was at length fixed to send a herald to the cat, to warn her to leave the castle forthwith, or that force would be used to remove her. "For," said the counselors, "we would far more willing put up with the mice, since we are used to that evil, than get rid of them at the risk of our lives." A page accordingly went and asked the cat whether she were willing to quit the castle. But Puss, whose thirst became every moment more and more pressing, answered nothing more than "Meow, meow," which the page interrupted to mean "No, no," interpreted to mean "No, no." And therefore carried this answer to the king. "Well," said the counselors, "then we must try what force will do." So the guns were planted, and the palace was fired upon from all sides. When the fire reached the room where the cat was, she sprang out the window and ran away. But the besiegers did not see her, and went on firing until the whole place was burnt to the ground. Also, here's a nice picture of the page and a cat. King Grizzlybeard. A great king had a daughter who was very beautiful, but so proud and haughty and conceited that none of the princes who came to ask her in marriage were good enough for her, and she only made sport of them. Once upon a time, the king held a great feast and invited all her suitors, and they sat in a row according to their rank: kings and princes, dukes and earls. Then the princess came in and passed by them all, but she had something spiteful to say to every one. The first was too fat. He's as round as a tub," said she. The next was too tall. "What a maypole," said she. The next was too short. "What a dumpling," said she. The fourth was too pale, and she called him Wall-face. The fifth was too red, so she called him Coxcomb. The sixth was not straight enough, so she said he was like a green stick that had to be laid to dry over the baker's oven, and thus she had some joke to crack upon everyone. But she laughed more than all at a good king who was there. "Look at him," said she. "His beard is like an old mop. He shall be called Grizzlybeard." So the king got the nickname of Grizzlybeard. But the old king was very angry when he saw how his daughter behaved, and how she ill-treated all his guests. And he vowed that, willing or unwilling, she should marry the first beggar that came to the door. Can't tell if this is one page or two. It's two. Okay. There we go. the things about gilded edges. The pages sometimes get stuck together. Anyway, now you know. 2 days after, there came by a traveling musician who began to sing under the window and beg alms. And when the king heard him, he said, "Let him come in." So they brought in the dirty-looking fellow, and when he had sung before the king and the princess, he begged a boon. Then the king said, "You have sung so well that I will give you my daughter as for your wife." The princess begged and prayed, but the king said, "I have sworn to give you the first beggar, and I will keep my word." So words and tears were of no avail. The parson was sent for, and she was married to the musician. When this was over, the king said, "Now, get ready to go. You must not stay here. You must travel with your husband." Then the beggar departed and took her with him, and they soon came to a great wood. "Pray," said she, "whose is this wood?" "It belongs to King Grizzly Bear," answered he. "Hast thou taken him? All had been thine." "Ah, unlucky wretch that I am," sighed she. Would that I had married King Grizzly Beard." Next they came to some fine meadows. "Whose are those beautiful green meadows?" said she. "Those belong to King Grizzly Beard. Hast thou taken him? They had all been thine." "Ah, unlucky wretch that I am," said she. "Would that I had married that King Grizzly Beard." Then they came to a great city. Whose is this noble city?" said she. "It belongs to King Grizzly Beard. Hast thou taken him? It had all been thine." "Ah, miserable wretch that I am," sighed she. Oh, here's a picture of her. "Why did I not marry King Grizzly Beard? That is no business of mine," said the musician. "Why should you wish for another husband? Am I not good enough for you?" At last they came to a small cottage. "What a paltry place," said she. "To whom does that dirty little dirty hole belong?" The musician answered, "That is your and my house, where we are to live." "Where are your servants?" cried she. "What do we want with servants?" said he. "You must do for yourself whatever is to be done. Now make a fire and put on water and cook my supper, for I am very tired." But the princess knew nothing of making fires and cooking, and the beggar was forced to help her. When they had eaten a very scanty meal, they went to bed, but the musician called her up very early in the morning to clean house. Thus they lived for 2 days, and when they had eaten up all there was in the cottage, the man said, "Wife, we can't go on thus, spending money and earning nothing. You must learn to weave baskets." Then he went out and cut willows and brought them home, and she began to weave, but it made her fingers very sore. "I see, this work won't do," said he. "Try and spin. Perhaps you will do that better." So she sat down and tried to spin, but the threads cut her tender fingers till the blood ran. "See now," said the musician. "You are good for nothing. You can do no work? What a bargain I have got. However, I'll try and set up a trade in pots and pans, and you shall stand in the market and sell them." Alas, alas, sighed she, "when I stand in the market and any of my father's court pass by and see me there, how they will laugh at me." But the beggar did not care for that, and said she must work if she did not wish to die of hunger. At first the trade went well, for many people, seeing such a beautiful woman, went to buy her wares and paid their money without thinking of taking away the goods. They lived on this as long as it lasted, and then her husband bought a fresh lot of ware, and she sat herself down with it in the corner of the market. But a drunken soldier soon came by and rode his horse against her stall and broke all of her goods to 1,000 pieces. She began to weep and knew not what to do. "Ah, what will become of me?" said she. "What will my husband say?" So she ran home and told him all. Who would have thought you would have been so silly," said he, "as to put an earthenware stall in the corner of the market, where everybody passes? But let us have no more crying. I see you are not fit for this sort of work." So I have been to the king's palace and asked if they did not want a kitchen maid, and they have promised to take you, and there you will have plenty to eat. Thus the princess became a kitchen maid and helped the cook to do all the dirtiest work. She was allowed to carry home some of the meat that was left, and on this she and her husband lived. She had not been there long before where did I leave off? I was distracted by the mail carrier. Ooh, I see your package. Okay, let's see here. I'll have to snag that later. Come on, brain. Where did we leave off? Before she heard that the king's eldest son was passing by, going to be married, and she went to one of the windows to look out. Everything was ready, and all the pomp and splendor of the court was there. Then she thought, with an aching heart, of her own sad fate, and bitterly grieving for the pride and folly which had brought her so low. And the servants gave her some of the rich meats, which she put into her basket to take home. All of a sudden, as she was going out, in came the king's son in golden clothes. And when he saw a beautiful woman at the door, he took her by the hand, and said she should be his partner in the dance. But she trembled for fear, for she saw that it was King Grizzlybeard who was making sport of her. However, he kept fast hold and led her in, and the cover of her basket came off, so that the meats in it fell all about. Then everybody laughed and jeered at her, and she was so abashed that she wished herself 1,000 feet deep in the earth. She sprang to the door and ran away, but on the steps King Grizzlybeard overtook and brought her back and said, "Fear me not. I am the musician who has lived with you in the hut. I brought you there because I love you. I loved you. I am also the soldier who overset your stall. I have done all this only to cure you of your pride and to punish you for the ill treatment you bestowed on me. Now all is over. You have learnt wisdom. Your faults are gone. And it is time to celebrate our marriage feast. Then the chamberlains came and brought her the most beautiful robes, and her father and his whole court were there already, and congratulated her on her marriage. Joy was in every face. The feast was grand, and all were merry, and I wish you and I had been of the party. I'm just gonna pause here because I really like that story and I want to talk about it. First of all, it's nice to have kind of like, not a literal, like, it is kind of a Beauty and the Beast story, but it's not a literal Beauty and the Beast story. It's like, there is not a literal beast. You know, there is a character who is not like aesthetically pleasing, so to speak, but it's more like the quote-unquote beauty character who has to change in this story, because her heart is where the real evil is. Like, she has an ugly heart. Like, she is very prideful, very self-centered. That is where the real, like, beast is. Like, the real beast is her heart. The real beast is not this guy who seemingly is ugly. So yeah, it's just a really good story about really good work ethic. I like that. And I think we're gonna pause here so I can go grab that package.